first of all, it's a great honor to be here again, and it's a great honor to work with the artists, the actors, the crews here in India. And we're in Goa right now. I've never been to Goa before, but I spent a lot of time in Mumbai, and it was very expansive for me. Anytime you get to work in another culture, especially a culture so passionate, with such strong arts and so much talent and a great cinema, a great cinematic tradition, this is I learn more. I'm growing, and I knew it would be a big adventure filming in Jungly, and it was. And I'm looking forward to coming back with another project, entirely different kind of project here to India. The world of horror. Okay, I never think of it as the world of horror, but I get what you mean. All right, so ever since I was a child, I had reoccurring nightmares. So I'm what is called a lucid dreamer. I learned about it since. And within those dreams, when you're a lucid dreamer, I didn't know what it was called when I was a kid, but I would have similar nightmares. I don't know why. But those dreams made me fascinated with dreams and facing fear. Because in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says when you die, you face your demons, and you're meant to run at them. Now, I learned this sense, but when I was a kid, I began to do that. So I'm telling you a lot about my childhood. But dealing with reoccurring nightmares as a child made me fascinated with horror. So maybe I do horror to control it, right? Maybe I do horror in dreams because I am so amazed that you and I are sitting here having a normal conversation, but when you go to sleep at night, you could fall into an amazing world. Maybe it's frightening, maybe it's beautiful, and we think nothing of it. We think, oh, well, it's a dream. Well, what is it really? Is it a spiritual reflection of ourselves? Is it random? I've studied this with some specialists in dream research at Stanford, and there are different opinions about it. But I think dreaming is a catharsis, and I think cinema is bizarrely similar to dreams. We like horror films because if you're tense, if you don't like the president, if you don't like the economy or the war, or there's some other trouble in your life, seeing a horror film cleans you out. It makes you face a trauma. Now, it's a pretend trauma, but if the film's strong, you get an emotional response as if you faced your worst fear. And you came out, perhaps with your friends from seeing the cinema, perhaps with some popcorn, you go have a nice dinner, everything's fine, but you're releasing endorphins. When your tension is too much, you feel lighter after a good scary film. You're thinking of that character in that film and that evil. And in my movies, I like to show it's been conquered usually, because I think it fulfills the catharsis. And it's strangely similar to comedy, where laughing releases our endorphins. So I find comedy and horror both interesting, powerful genres. So maybe horror films are great for India. I don't know. I'd like to learn how the Indian audience has responded to horror films. So I guess my film was a hit here, but that was my first directing gig, and it was so successful that I didn't do the research like where it did well. I do now. I know more now about the world. But I'm glad if it worked in India, because I try to make my films universal. I don't want them to be just about the American experience. Dreams are universal, and maybe that's why it was effective here. Also, you can't create fear in an audience, if that is the goal in a horror film, unless they care about the characters. We have to create suspense and jeopardy. And if you relate to the character, you can do violent horror, and it's scary because it's disgusting, right? I like to do supernatural horror, use my imagination, make people face something even beyond, but something that represents evil to me, and see how they deal with it. How can they conquer it? Force the audience to think their way out. In Elm Street 3, we had a great young cast based on the reality of suicide and drugs in teenagers. So that, what is the metaphor for the horror in a film? In this case, the metaphor was suicide. For me, Freddy Krueger represented the urge to kill yourself. And specifically, if you look at Elm Street 3, it's not just Freddy as a ghost, it's more than that. It's Freddy causing you to hallucinate to kill yourself. So I think that's an extremely powerful and terrifying thing that we must overcome, and it's good to identify. Well, I did, to research the screenwriting, I volunteered at a halfway house for suicidal teens. So I didn't say I'm here for a film, I said I'm here to clean up and help whatever you need. And I worked for about a month, and I was under supervision, met some of the kids and just acted professional. One kid, they asked me to play chess with him. That's something they thought would be good for this young man who had tried to kill himself. And that empathy of vulnerable kids that have gone through something that many of us may have gone through was a great basis for horror, because you have the empathy. You already feel like you're one with the character, therefore you want the character to survive, and what is scary becomes even more frightening. I believe in it, but the thing is, I believe in God, and even I believe in angels. So I've had some experiences. I was in a car accident, and I was clinically dead for a little while. So, I mean, there is good. The good is more powerful than the evil. The evil is like soap bubbles. They just pop when you put light on them, okay? So evil's real, and the danger of supernatural evil is the seduction of believing in it and thinking it's more powerful than you. You, human beings, are more powerful than supernatural evil, I promise you. And God's there for all of us, and your culture has, the Hindu culture has a lot of fascinating gods. I do. I believe in the world mythology, and what blew my mind was reading the Ramayana. How do you say it correctly? Ramayana. It's so much like Hercules and Greek mythology. The heroes, the wonderful villains. Ravana. It's his sister. Amazing stories, right? So this is universal material. I know it's a spiritual text, so I don't know how to speak about it honorably, but I will tell you that's a great story. I couldn't put it down, and it also reminds me of almost science fiction. So, yes, I admire Indian mythology. I'm not an expert, but as entertainment and a storyteller, I thought it was terrific. Well, there's a lot to talk about with The Mask. Look, I had a death in my family, and they wanted me to make a horror film called The Mask, because the original material from a comic book was very scary. That comic book was copying Freddy Krueger. You could tell. It was, he put on a mask, he would say a joke, and he would kill people. So I was cool comic book, but I told the people at New Line Cinema who wanted to make it, I go, I could do this, but it will be so close to Freddy Krueger, it's going to feel like a copy, even though there's an interesting visual. Then there's this actor named Jim Carrey in a TV show called In Living Color at the time. And I said, this guy's a full-on genius, like a silent film star. He's like a Charlie Chaplin or a Buster Keaton. We've got to make a comedy. I know what to do, trust me. And the producers, surprisingly, trust me. It's very hard to get anything original made. So with all this AI and the authority of corporations, it's very hard to get original things made. So I haven't mastered it, but the AI, unfortunately, is not creative. They try to make you think it is, but it's basically taking everything we've already written, brilliantly analyzing it, and creating architecture. So I think AIs create architecture, but not originality. So they'll take, I've tested my AI. I've embraced my AI. I've said, you're my writing partner, AI. And I've experimented with writing a script with an AI. The word diversity wasn't even invented in the 90s. And for me, it was like, I want new cast members. I want something exciting. I want to put Arnold Schwarzenegger with an amazing black actress called Vanessa Williams. Is that shocking? Good, because I haven't seen Arnold with anybody like that. So I want something original, right? So the resistance of people like me, like I love new talent. So if the talent's Asian or African or whatever, it's just, I don't want the restrictions. So for me, it's about, I don't want restrictions on my casting choices. Now it's a little bit like rules of diversity. It's not as much fun, but I'm glad for it because it's giving me more freedom to use whoever I want. So is the Asian narrative part of stories? Well, I hope so. There's fantastic Asian stories. It's fresh, and they happen to be, honestly, the men and the women there's beauty. And even the bad guys are fantastic. So to an American, this is exotic is the word. Most Americans haven't gotten to travel the way I am, and it's almost a shock to them to see they're just like us. Everyone's the same. It's the human condition. There's love, there's hate. It's the human condition, and it's great to expand the soul, to see it's one family. I'm an optimist, but I'm not naive. But we're all one family. How can the silliness of the mask be popular in India culture that I knew nothing about when I was writing, working on that script? It's because we laugh, we love, we fear similar things. So I strive to make universal stories because I'm not a politician. I don't like war, but I want people to understand we're all the same. So just telling the stories, simply telling stories, it doesn't matter, good guys, bad guys, whatever, with different actors from different cultures and different heritage, is enlightening to the Western public and the world public. So part of my little mission in my head is to enlighten Westerners a little bit with a love for the cultures I'm familiar with.